Well, hello, my friendly friends. It seems that NoFap November is upon us. NoFap November. Today is the very first day of November, and today is the first day of no fapping allowed for the next 30 days. Fapping, if you don't know, is the internet slang for masturbating. So our 30-day challenge, the most basic challenge in the world, is no fapping for 30 days. None at all. Not allowed. Why would you want to do something so crazy as to not fap, not have a good time with yourself? Well, the number one reason you don't want to is because it's a fucking degenerate behavior, and only degenerate retards engage in this behavior. And this is one reason why our society is so degenerate. And we are going to fix it. We are going to rise above this degenerate impulse, and we're going to get in touch with the true masculine nature, which does not play with itself. There are many benefits, friends, of following NoFap November. You're going to develop self-discipline and self-reliance. And you're going to build energy rather than release energy. You're going to make yourself great instead of making yourself late for work because you were jerking off. So, friends, this is NoFap November. I'm not inviting you to join me. I'm demanding you join me. No ifs, ands, or buts. NoFap November. Every day for the next 30 days, you will not fap. You will not jerk off. It's as simple as that. And there are, of course, a number of great benefits. And I will get into those benefits a little bit later in this show. I want to get started right now by talking about somebody we all know by the name of Jesus. Welcome to the Bold and Determined Podcast with your man Victor Pride. And right here on the Podcast for Winners, we're bringing you motivation and mindset for the killers and real dealers, the makers and the takers, the winners and the grinners, and goddamn, even the sinners too. Let's get started. Hello, my friendly friends. Welcome back to the Bold and Determined Podcast with your man, Victor Pride. And you know what, friends? Maybe we'll just call the show Victor Pride Podcast. That's got a better ring to it. Let me know what you think about that. Regarding our 30-day challenge, let me tell you a little bit about my 30-day challenge. Here's what I'm going to do. For 30 days, I'm going to write an article and publish an article every day for 30 days. For 30 days, I'm going to eat only one meal a day. And after those 30 days, I'm going to write an article about it. I'm going to do a 30-day cycle of red growth, and then I'm going to write an article about it. Of course, I'm following NoFap November. I follow the NoFap life, but I will also be following NoFap November, which you will be following as well. And of course, there are great benefits of NoFap November. Some of those benefits are more confidence, more self-assurance, more self-reliance, more energy, deeper voice, pride in yourself, less social anxiety, better sleep, better posture, a more masculine and aggressive attitude. Those are just a few of the reasons. If you want to read more about NoFap November, check out the article I entitled Why You Should Celebrate NoFap November, now available at boldanddetermined.com. Read it and weep. And in regards to my 30-day challenge, again, I'll be writing an article every day for 30 days. I'm eating one meal a day for the next 30 days. Let's see how that goes. And again, I'm taking a 30-day cycle of red growth. And I feel like I can put on, I want to say I can put on 5 pounds of muscle while eating only one meal a day every day for 30 days. So let's see how that goes. I'll be writing about that when it's finished. Of course, I will keep you informed on the podcast as well. What do you say we get the show started today, my friendly friends? What did we start? What did we leave off with last time? What could it be? Oh, yes. DC Russ asked us, what are your biggest takeaways from lost texts such as the Gospel of Thomas? Well, the Gospel of Thomas is a gospel that was not canonized, meaning it was not put in the Christian Bible. For whatever reason could that be? Gee golly gosh. perhaps it did not conform with the needs and the wants of the church. Here's a quote from the Gospel of Thomas. Jesus said, "Don't lie, and don't do what you hate, because all things are disclosed before heaven. After all, there is nothing hidden that will not die revealed, and there is nothing covered up that will remain undisclosed." That's a very nice quote about not lying. Here's another quote. He said, his disciples said to him, "Is circumcision useful or not?" He said to them, "If it were useful, their father would produce children already circumcised from their mother." So, friends, it seems as though the Gospel of Thomas was not canonized because it may have possibly taken money away from the church in one way or another. And you will see a little bit later why that is important. D.C. Russ also asked, what were spiritual leaders like Jesus actually trying to teach? Well, this could be a whole 10-part podcast on its own. But what I'd like to do, friend, is I'd like to read from a document entitled The Secret Doctrines of Jesus and let you know exactly what old Jesus was actually trying to teach. Here we go. This is from The Secret Doctrine of Jesus. Looking back through history, we find that on scores of occasions, dating back into great antiquity, God has inspired certain wise and select characters to be revelators or avatars. Their role is to teach and preach such knowledge as would lift human consciousness to a higher plane, making our understanding and comprehension broader, and bringing us closer into attunement with the principles of eternal life and truth. Each of these great lights has contributed to the advancement of civilization and to the moral development of humanity. It is a fundamental truth, as true today as it was 2,000 years ago, that not all humans are prepared or ready or qualified in any sense to receive or to comprehend and use the higher truths of life and the miraculous power that comes from such knowledge. Great truths can be destroyed by giving them common circulation and putting them in the category of everyday facts, easily acquired and easily comprehended without any effort or worthiness. Until individuals become worthy spiritually as well as intellectually and socially, they neither deserve nor can they absorb and properly apply the greater truths that make us free and start one on the path of eternal life. The very experiences of Jesus in carrying out his mission give us excellent reasons for the principle of secrecy. A very definite distinction must be made between Christianity and churchianity in considering the evolution of the Christian religion. Today, everything in and of the Christian religion is subservient to churchianity. Is it any wonder that the mystical spirit, the mystical doctrines and practices of the original Christian sect are almost wholly unknown to the general membership of the worldwide Christian church? It is generally conceded by conscientious authorities within the Christian church that many of the present-day doctrines and teachings were invented or extracted from pagan religions solely because of ecclesiastical necessity or expediency. Take, for example, the fundamental doctrine of the original sin. For the church to have held simply that all human beings must be saved or redeemed from the sins of their own commission and of which they were guilty would have eliminated the necessity of redeeming those who had lived a good and sinless life, and particularly millions of infants and little children who had never committed an actual sin or any act of which they were guilty. To increase the membership of the church, to build it greater and greater, in a purely physical form, all humanity of every religious belief, of every age, even infants and children, must find redemption and salvation exclusively in the Christian church. The most godly of beings, the most holy of little children, must be forced into the church to be saved. From what? It was not enough that only those that should be saved who had knowingly or unknowingly committed one or more of the increasing number of sins listed by the church. Now, every living creature, even those created and born in the image of God and of goodly acts, must be saved and redeemed. As an ecclesiastical necessity, the doctrine of the original sin was created, inverted out of whole cloth, and officially decreed as a very fundamental principle. No matter how short an earthly life one might have lived, even a brief hour, nor how perfectly and in what a godly manner one might have lived, one was still cursed with the sin by inheriting the original sin. From this inheritance, none could escape. Not even the little babe whose soul was just projected from the divine consciousness of God. The doctrine was truly a necessity. It has proved to be the most objectionable of all to millions of thinking men and women, and especially to parents who hold in their arms for their first time a little baby in all its certain goodness. Yet we are told that God is a God of justice, mercy, and love. Still, the innocent must inherit, through the will of God, a sin that condemns the soul to everlasting punishment, unless it is redeemed. Nowhere in the original teachings of Jesus do we find this doctrine represented as the church represents it. It is the most conspicuous of the many inconsistent, contradictory doctrines of the Christian religion of today. The Christian religion, the Christian form of churchianity, is one of the most complex systems of today, as compared with the extreme and magnificent simplicity of the systems unfolded by Jesus. During his lifetime, his followers, and bitter critics, made much of the fact that his system of salvation, his way, was so simple to comprehend, so direct and logical, and so easy for the sincere to adopt and follow, that it was either manifestly divine or ridiculously childish, according to the mind of the commentator. As a great flash of lightning dispels the darkness, so the astonishing yet simple statements of Jesus revealed the fundamentals of God's laws. Love thy neighbor. Become as a child. Do unto others as you would have them do unto you. Abandon the vainglorious things of the world. Seek the kingdom of heaven within. Lift up your consciousness to God in prayer and communion. And other easily understood rules constituted the true path to eternal life. The Christian religion in its present-day form is no longer the divinely inspired religion of Jesus, but a human-made system of pagan and modern ideas carefully fabricated to conceal, rather than reveal, the transcendental jewels in the diadem of pristine teachings of Jesus the Christ. I'm going to link that book for you, my friends. I read that book over the week. What a fun book it is. It's called The Secret Doctrines of Jesus. And I'll link it for you in the bold and determined article. And I'm going to link for you another fun book that I think you will really enjoy. It's called The Mystical Life of Jesus. And it tells the life of Jesus as he was a man. And it's very interesting, and those books are both free to read. You can find them at B&D right now. Drew asks, Hi Vic, I'm 21 years old and looking to take Red Growth now that Red PCT 2.0 is available. I am currently in very good shape, but I would like to take it to the next level. Are there any long-term risks associated with Red Growth for someone my age? I've also been doing steak and eggs for 5 days per week and carbs the other 2 days. On Red Growth, should I stick with this diet, or would no carb be better on the cycle? Okay, my friend, there should be no long-term risks for doing a cycle of Red Growth at your age, or even any age, especially if you use Red PCT 2.0 after finishing Red Growth. As a first-time user of any anabolic supplement, you should follow the beginner's protocol that we outline on the site. That is, for the first week, 1 capsule per day. For the second week, 2 capsules per day. For the third week, 3 capsules per day. And for the fourth week, 3 capsules per day. Your diet that you are currently following is going to be fine for gaining muscle. You are eating the right stuff. Just make sure you're eating enough. And carbs are fine if you are most concerned with gaining weight or building muscle or size as fast as possible. If you're looking to get lean, cut out the carbs. If you're looking to get big, add the carbs. Simple as that. RH asks, do you read books or blogs written by female writers? If so, what do you expect to learn from them, and who are your favorite female writers? As a general rule and as a general habit, no, I do not read females in any way, shape, or form. However, there are extraordinary females who rise to the top, and my favorite female author was a lady named Chin-Ning Chu from China. She's dead now, so rest in peace. But her books were very, very fantastic, and they were free from all the woo-woo that all the Western ladies seem to include in every bit of writing they have. Her books are entitled Thick Face, Black Heart, Do Less, Achieve More, and my personal favorite, The Asian Mind Game. I would suggest you pick up all of those books and read them. They are very good. I also liked S.E. Hinton when I was a youngster. She wrote Rumblefish and The Outsiders and those teenage angst books that I found in school one day. So those are the only two female writers that I read. I did read Interview with a Vampire by Anne Rice when I was young, and that book convinced me that I could be a writer one day, and I'll tell you exactly why. That book convinced me I could be a writer because it was so doggone bad. I thought it was such a silly book, and so many people loved it. I thought, I can do better than this. And that is how Bold and Determined was born about 20 years before it was ever born. Money Study asks, porn and masturbation has quickly become the single biggest killer of motivation for men. Do you think in the future there will be two castes of men, one who avoid porn and are successful and the other who are shameful porn watchers? Friend, what are you talking about future? This is upon us. This is a reality right now. There are two castes of men, the degenerate, retarded porn watchers and the successful. There's no need to think about what could happen in the future because this world is the world we live in right now. And in fact, many of the successful provide the unsuccessful with the porn to make a tasty profit on it. And that's the stone cold truth about where your pornography comes from. The people who sell this to you, of course, don't watch it because it ruins minds, it ruins careers, it ruins everything. So successful people don't watch it. Dan asks, you've surely noticed that Western men, well, let's just say that we lack survival skills. It seems we assume everything will always be okay, and if something ever goes wrong, like a natural disaster, a foreign invasion, or a collapse of society, then someone will come in to our rescue. What do you make of this? Should we all be learning and preparing, getting some skills, or have an exit plan? It's quite time-consuming. What plan do you have for yourself? Okay. To say that Western men lack survival skills is putting it mildly. Western men have no skills. They have outsourced everything, and all they do is consume. So they have no skills other than whipping out their credit card and going to their 9-to-5 job where they don't do any real work. A big, big, big problem with Western males is the need for a savior, or the belief that a savior is going to come and save them. So they have let go any semblance of self-reliance and self-discipline. They no longer have self-reliance because they want the government to come and save them. Oh, the government should do this. The government should do that. Always waiting for a savior to come and save him will never do anything to save himself. And that's why I started B&D, because I got sick of seeing these pathetic, degenerate, retarded, Western men waiting for other people to save them and doing nothing to save themselves. Friends, the power of salvation is in your own hands. Self-reliance and self-discipline will be your savior. Nothing else is coming to save you. The government will do nothing to help you, ever. Never. Jesus is not coming back. Trump is not going to save you. If you want salvation, get your hands dirty. If you don't want salvation, keep whining about it. Nick asks, given the recent events of the Me Too movement and the misandry that the media and many American women have towards men, I have come to the conclusion that it is dangerous to get involved with American women in any way. If you do something she doesn't like, say the wrong thing, or if she has a boyfriend and gets caught, you could very well end up with a false rape accusation, have your reputation destroyed, or do jail time. I'm aware that this can happen in other places, but in America it seems to be a part of the culture. Because of this, I have went full MGTOW on American women and won't have anything to do with them. Are my fears justified, or am I overreacting? Your fears are very justified, and no, you are not overreacting. You are reacting rationally. I myself left the American female back in 2010, and since then I've only had a brief interaction, shall we say, with American females, and nothing of the longer than an hour sort. So I personally gave up on them a long time ago, and they're even worse today than they were in 2010. I wish it wasn't the case, but sometimes we have to stare reality in the face and admit reality. Say that American females have gone insane with power. And everything our friendly friend here said is absolutely true. They can ruin your life in the snap of a finger. And they'll do it too. We've all seen it happen a million billion times. Isn't going to happen to me because I don't have nothing to do with them. But if you, for example, get married to one of these creatures, oh boy, you're playing with fire. You are playing with fire. And you are not wearing a flame repellent suit, are you? You got to be very careful in this world about who you get involved with. And it's easy to say, well, just find a good one, find a unicorn. The problem is, they're all damn near the same. Because the propaganda, shall we call it, has penetrated the minds of nearly every American. And it's only very few of us who are outside of this quote-unquote matrix. And very few women are outside of this. Very few women are on board with abortion all the time and random sex all the time and feminism. Yeah, give me money. Divorce men and give me their money. Yeah, girl power. Yeah. Of course, this destroys society, and it causes good men such as myself, or perhaps bad guys such as myself, to say, no thanks. But it is what it is, friends, and you just got to be aware of it. Asks, if someone is on testosterone, wouldn't keto and other low-carb diet styles be less ideal? The carb-nutrient partitioning is better when having high T levels and fat is no longer needed in higher amounts for the hormonal benefits since they are receiving their hormones exogenously. Would this warrant a higher carb and lower fat intake? I enjoy eating mainly carnivore foods like fatty meats, but would think it is less optimal / needed if I am already getting my T level synthetically and not from food. Friend, you are forgetting one very important thing. You have many more hormones in your body than just testosterone, and all of those hormones and all of the processes in your body rely on getting the correct vitamins. If you don't get the correct vitamins, you're always going to be sick. And the best way to get the vitamins that are fat soluble is to eat the grass-fed meat. So health is always our number one goal. The number one goal is not to look great, but be sick on the inside. The goal is to feel great and look great. So it's always best to eat the proper diet. It is always best to get the proper nutrition, the proper vitamins, the proper minerals into your system. And the best way that we can do that today is with our grass-fed fatty meat and not with the carbohydrates. So no, it is not ideal to have a high carb or even a moderate carb diet on TRT because number one, TRT is not that great. It's not so great that you're just going to inject it and develop a six-pack overnight if you start eating carbs. It's very mild compared to many of the other steroids in regards to fat burning. And even if you were on the hardcore of the hardcore and you were burning all this fat, but you were not eating your fat-soluble vitamins, you're going to feel like absolute death. So even if you look good taking all this gear, you're going to feel like absolute death. And I'll give you proof. Go look at videos of bodybuilder Jay Cutler and look at his eyes. The man can barely stay awake. And look at his diet. He's eating zero fat. He's eating egg whites and oatmeal. Your standard bodybuilding food, because he, of course, will assume, I can't accuse anybody because I don't want to get sued. We can assume that he uses something or other to help him get his physique. And he doesn't eat fat. And look at his eyes. The man has no energy. That's the funny thing about bodybuilders. They are the lowest energy people in the room because they don't eat any fat. The guys couldn't run the length of a football field. They couldn't tie their shoelaces without getting out of breath. So it's never good to be less than healthy just to have a six-pack or just to look good. It's always better to be healthy because a healthy body is a healthy mind. And what these guys today don't understand is that you can eat the fat and the protein and leave the carbs and still look nice and ripped and have good energy. The bodybuilders of the 1970s are absolute living proof of how healthy and good you could look by eating the no-carb diet when you were taking extracurricular supplements. Michael T. asks, you advocate eating a grass-fed natural animals and an all-carnivore diet. However, you also advise lowering expenses as low as possible. I am continuing on my entrepreneurial journey and will be leaving my current contract position in 5 months and would like to live low cost. Grass-fed ribeye usually runs $10 to $13 per meal. How do you personally strike the balance between saving and eating the natural human diet? Well, I spend a lot of money on my food. You see, I'm not willing to have poor health and poor energy just to save a few bucks. You save a few bucks today, you pay for it later in the future. So I pay whatever it costs. I pay $23.99 per pound of good grass-fed ribeye from my rancher. So I pay a lot of money for my nice steak. Again, if you want to live on rice and beans, that's fine, but it's only your health that you're going to be paying with. So to save money, to save a few dollars, which don't mean anything, dollars are not backed by gold. They have no value other than what we mentally place on them. They have no value. You're willing to trade that for your health. I'm not willing to do that. Health is the real wealth in this world. I'll spend any amount of money to have my health. I'll never save money at the expense of my health. But I will give you a tip to get your grass-fed fat. And fat is the most important hormone. Fat is the holy grail of nutrients. And I'm talking, of course, about grass-fed animal fat. I'm not talking about avocados. I'm not talking about peanut oil. I'm talking about grass-fed animal fat is the holy grail of nutrition. And there's a very simple way you can get this for free, because most people are degenerate retards and they throw away the fat. They don't want the fat. So when you go to your butchers and you go to buy your grass-fed steaks, watch what they do. They cut off all the fat and they throw it away. And if you just say, hey man, can you give me that grass-fed fat? You just cut off all these steaks? They'll say, yeah, I can do that for you. And then they'll give you all the fat, all of the tremendous, nice grass-fed fat. They cut off all the steaks. They'll give it to you for free. So you can go ahead and you can buy whatever the cheapest grass-fed steak you can find and mix it with the free fat they give you and save money, but not at the expense of your health. So that's one tip. Another tip would be hunt. Go find your own meat. He asks another question. He says, how come no books in Christianity were written by Yahshua himself? Yahshua is the original name of Jesus. Of course, Jesus was not his real name as he was a Jew. Jesus is the anglicized version of his name. His real name was Yehoshua or something like that. He goes on to say, only by his followers were the books of Christianity written. How come this is never discussed? Isn't it possible that his followers perverted his work? My understanding is that Yahshua came to break us free of organized religion. Also, how come no one questions that the largest influence in the early church was Paul, whose name was changed from Saul? He wrote many New Testament books, but before he became a Christian, he was the largest mass murderer of Christians. Well, many people do talk about it. They just don't talk about it in the church because, as we discussed earlier, the real religion of Christianity is not the same thing as churchianity today. That is why it is not discussed, and that is why, of course, his work was perverted for control and monetary gain. And yes, his original quest was to break us free from organized religion and from ridiculous ritual like circumcision and many of the other things that the people of 2,000 years ago were following and had no reason to, because the salvation comes from within. You cannot find it without. And of course, the church doesn't want you to think that. The church wants you to think that you can only find it within. So that is why it is never discussed. Why is it never discussed that Paul, whose name was changed from Saul? I think we can probably figure that out if we think real hard. Joseph asks, what are some good skills that a man can become an expert in that he can then use to make a lot of money, particularly for someone starting out at 19 years old with a few grand saved? The best skill you can develop is the skill of wit and intelligence, because so many people today are degenerate fucking retards who don't have the ability to think. And if you have the ability to think, you have a great skill in this world. And I'm not trying to be a jerk by saying that people are degenerate and retarded today. It's a simple fact. And I'll give you a great book to read so you can learn all about this. The book is called Nutrition and Physical Degeneration by Weston A. Price. Weston A. Price was a dentist 100 years ago, and he traveled to all these different regions of the world where people were not living modern lives, and they were living their old school lives and eating their old school diet. And these people all had vibrant personalities and intelligent brains, and they had incredible bodies, and they had incredible morals, and they were just sturdy, hardy, all around great people. And because of our Western diet, the vegetable oils, the white flour, the white sugar, people are degenerating mentally and physically. And every year, people are degenerating more and more and more. The people of the past were so much more vigorous and intelligent and stronger than us. And that's just a simple fact. So today, it's very difficult to find somebody who has a brain who can use it to think and to see things logically rather than emotionally. So the greatest skill you can develop is to become a logical thinker, because it's missing from so many people today that it can serve to help you. It can serve to guide you through this life into a life of perhaps wealth or whatever you want, be it wealth or family or whatever you want. But that's your number one skill that any man must have, is the ability to think logically. ASDF asks, "Hey Vic, what are your thoughts on individualism and collectivism?" Well, it's like asking me, what are my thoughts on left and right? They're two paths on the same line. And like the Buddha figured out 2,500 years ago, the middle path is usually the right way. So between individualism and collectivism, somewhere right down the middle is going to be your best bet. Too much collectivism, and you get people who can do nothing for themselves. Too much individualism, and you get people who only do things for themselves. So you must be individualistic in the sense that you must have self-reliance and self-discipline. You must be self-motivated, but your motivation should be for the greater good of the society. And you should work within the greater good of the society. Now, of course, that can be very hard today when the society is full of degenerate retards. But in an ideal world, which is a world without our modern governments, this is exactly how the people were. They were strong, sturdy, self-reliant people who did good for the collective. That's going to be your best way, is the middle way. Like Mr. Gautama Buddha figured out. Gautama Buddha, he was born a rich prince, and he ran away from his life as a rich prince to be an ascetic. And an ascetic is somebody who gives away all things of the world and lives on a few grains of rice and has no worldly possessions. And he figured out correctly that the middle way is the best way. It's not great to be a rich prince, and it's not great to be a dirty bum. In the middle is going to be your best way. He goes on to ask, in a previous podcast, you stated socialism and capitalism, just like any other ism, is a means of control. It would seem like the ambitious entrepreneur such as yourself would prefer a capitalist system, as it would allow his rise to the top to be uninhibited by state intervention on the behalf of the collective. Even though both isms are meant to control, you don't at least prefer capitalism to socialism, or is there another economic theory that you prefer? There is another economic theory that I prefer, but of the two evils, I will take capitalism over socialism. Of course, I would take capitalism over socialism. Only a degenerate retard would choose socialism, communism over capitalism. But you have something incorrect in what you said here. You said that a capitalist system would allow you to rise to the top uninhibited by state intervention, and you could not be more wrong about that. We have more state intervention probably than in the history of any society in the world. We are extremely burdened by state intervention, and that's putting it mildly. In our society, we are not free from the intervention on behalf of the collective. That is simply not true. We probably live in the greatest tyranny in the history of the world, and any tyranny is simply a big government. The bigger the government, the more the tyranny. And that's the way it is. JP asks, what is your advice for starting bloggers or internet entrepreneurs? Should they get licensing, tax IDs, LLCs? before they proceed in running the business, or should they get them when they're earning a decent revenue? Well, this goes back to the very last question regarding state intervention. People today are even afraid to write words on a computer before they get licensing and tax IDs and LLCs from the government. So you see, we're not actually free from this. We are, in fact, hindered by it greatly. But to answer the question, start writing a blog if you want to be a blogger. You don't cross bridges before you come to them. So before you're making money, you don't worry about the tax IDs and the LLCs. You start writing, and then you cross bridges as you get to them. If you don't cross bridges as you get to them, you will never get to them. If you're constantly thinking about the third and the fourth step in the future, you're never going to start the first step right now. So start the first step by starting your blog at badnet.com and start writing. When you start making money in a year and a half, then you can deal with the LLC. Maximilian asks, Vic, what do you think about occasionally eating fats in the form of nuts and avocados? Well, I don't do it. Nuts can't be digested. That's why you always eat peanuts in your poo-poo. And avocados don't taste good. So I don't eat them, don't believe in them. The best fat is the saturated animal fat, and that is the treasure of all nutrition. So I don't waste my valuable stomach space eating goddamn nuts and avocados. Parik asks, when we speak about addictions, why do we not count sex? Most men, after a certain period without sexual activity, will get so horny and agitated that they will be unable to perform any activities until they obtain sexual release. Sexual addiction is, in my opinion, the single biggest addiction in the world. Well, friend, I've got to disagree with you right there. The biggest addiction in the world is our modern food. By far, by a huge margin, our biggest addiction is modern food. And then probably a very distant second is a sex addiction. Modern food, of course, is what is making people fat. And in pre-modern societies, when people ate their natural food, there were no fat people. All the people were sturdy and strong and with a joyous attitude. And our food makes us fat, stupid, sick, weak, and degenerate. And we can't stop eating it. That's the funny thing. It's a real addiction. It really is a real addiction. Our food, our modern food, which is bleached of all its minerals and vitamins. And we get addicted to it just like we get addicted to all things that are bad for us, like booze or reefer or cigarettes. You get addicted to the worst things, not to the best things. And our biggest addiction is modern food. Regarding the sex addiction, it's only natural that we want to have sex and procreate. This is why nature put us here, to procreate. And if we don't procreate, we're going against our own basic nature. So it's very rational and normal that if we go for a long period without sexual excitement, we get so horny and agitated that we're unable to perform. There is, of course, another way, the way of the ascetic, that is to give up the desire. And the desire is mental, much more than it is physical. The desire is mental. And once you give up the mental desire, the physical desire is nothing. Once you give up the mental desire for the ice cream or the sugar or the pizza or the cake, that physical desire is no longer there. Once you give up the mental desire for cigarettes or for booze, you have no use for them. So if you want to break free from your sex addiction, give up the desire mentally. And if you're not willing to do that, you're always going to be a slave to your desire. Eli asks, you said that in 1 month you were a good guitar player. How'd you do this? I understand you have to get obsessed to get good at something, but did you have a teacher? Did you watch YouTube videos? Did you learn by books? Please elaborate. No, to none of those things. I didn't have a teacher. There was no YouTube at that time. I did read Guitar World magazines, but here's the best way you learn. Pick up a guitar, play it for 16 hours a day until you're good. It's really as simple as that. Read everything you can about it. Watch everything you can about it. If you know people who play guitar, ask them specific questions. Eventually you will learn it. You will never learn it if you don't pick up a guitar. You can ask a million billion questions. But if you don't have a guitar, you will know less than nothing about playing a guitar. If you want to learn it, pick it up, play it for 16 hours a day, have a desperate need to learn how to play it and play it well, and you will learn how to play it and play it well. Steve asks, I have a blog and a YouTube channel. I want to create digital products in the future by writing and publishing a series of ebooks, but are ebooks still in demand? Or is it better to create other content like video or online courses? Which ones would you choose and why? Well, again, you're talking about crossing a bridge before you get there. The first thing you have to have is an audience who wants to buy something from you. If you don't have an audience that wants to buy something from you, they won't. Regarding ebooks or video or online courses, all of them sell. If you have a YouTube channel, it's better to do video courses. If you have a blog, it's better to do ebooks. It's as simple as that. Vince asks, hey Vic, loved hearing about your morning routine, water, stretching, going to a coffee shop to work, reading in the afternoon. My question, when do you go to the gym and work out? And how many days a week do you go to the gym in this present season of your life? Well, I go to the gym in the afternoon after I get all of my morning work done and I get my first afternoon lull. I go home usually and I might take a little rest for a little while. And then when I feel good again in the afternoon, I get out to the gym. I get my pump on. And then I get out and I go to another coffee shop and I work again for another several hours. So I always lift weights in the afternoon. I don't ever waste my mornings going to the gym because, like I said in the last show, my mornings are my most creative, my best time. So I always want to spend my mornings working real hard on the business that pays. And then in the afternoon, when I don't do such good creative work, I get the gym out of the way. And I go about 3 or 4, possibly 5 times a week at this present season in my life. Damon asks, what advice do you have for someone that lost their job recently and is seeking a means of income without working a 9 to 5? I suggest that you go back and read the 8 years of content that is on boldanddetermined.com that precisely answer this question for you. What you should have done is never relied on the job in the first place. You should have been totally self-reliant on your income. So rather than relying on the income that they give you, and when they take it away from you, you have nothing, you should have your own sources of income, which is fully explained in the 8 years of greatness on boldanddetermined.com. He says, Vic, before getting the wisdom I have from your website, I watched a lot of porn and it screwed up my computer. I have malware, spyware, and it's compromised my information. I've received warnings from Microsoft that my iPhone and computer are at risk. I'm afraid to make purchases online due to my credit cards and banking information being compromised. What security procedures do you recommend I take to protect myself? Stop watching porn. Wolf asks, what are your experiences with real estate? Is it worth doing? How can a man start building his real estate empire? Real estate is one of the very few ways you're going to build wealth really fast. Real estate is one of the very few tried and true wealth builders. So real estate is always good. How do you get started? You just get started. It's as simple as that. If you wanted to know about real estate, you would be learning everything you possibly could about real estate and you would be getting into it. The barriers of entry are not so high as you think. And if you were really interested in learning, you would find that out. ML asks, do you do intentional SEO on your pieces? Some of the pieces have intentional SEO and some don't. Some are more artistic and don't need or require SEO. Some are done more from a business standpoint and those require SEO. It's really as simple as that. There is no yes or no answer for any question. There is no black or white for any question. Sometimes yes and sometimes no. Stephen asks, what's the most important everyday habit to be successful in life? That would be the habit of getting up and getting after it. The habit of trying, which is the habit that so few men in our modern world have. The habit of actually trying and not deflecting responsibility to somebody else. The habit of saying, it's my responsibility and God damn it, I'll wake up and I'll do it. And I'll do it again tomorrow and the next day. The habit of self-reliance. No deference of responsibility. You are the one who is responsible for your success in this life. And all men of success know this and live this. And all men of failure pretend it isn't true. Say, oh, he just got rich because he's lucky. Or he knows somebody. Or da-da-da-da-da-da-da. Always deflecting responsibility and never accepting responsibility. So the everyday most important habit for any man of would-be success: responsibility. Vios asks, how do you prevent getting sick? Also, if you do get sick, how do you make the illness go away? Well, I don't get sick unless I get food poisoning from food in Vietnam. Otherwise, I don't get sick. How do I prevent getting sick? I just eat good food. I just eat good, clean, natural food, and I try to limit my cheat meals. I try to limit the amount of times I eat the pizza or the ice cream. And if you are eating the good food 90% of the time, you're mostly not going to be sick, because there's no reason for you to get sick. People get sick for only very few reasons, and the number one reason people get sick is because they eat the wrong food. Of course, there are environmental things that can make you sick, but the number one way that people get sick, the number one way they get heart attacks and cancer and diabetes, is by eating the food that they eat. I don't eat the food that they eat, so I don't get sick like they get sick, and it's really as simple as that. Mark asks, is it beneficial to fast first thing in the morning and wait till noon to have a big lunch? Yeah, it definitely is. And in fact, that's what you could call intermittent fasting. And I intermittent fasted every day for an entire year. And I had phenomenal energy. My body felt great. And I kept a natural 6-pack abs for the entire year. Basically just by skipping breakfast and eating 2 meals a day. I'm going more hardcore for the next 30 days. I'm going to be eating 1 meal a day every day for 30 days. I'm going to see exactly how that pans out, but I have a feeling it's going to pan out pretty well. James asks, my question is about building muscle on the carnivore diet. I am tall, fit, and lean, but I don't have the muscle mass of a weightlifter. I used to be big, but lost most of my muscle after surgery kept me out of the gym for a couple of years. Is it possible on the carnivore diet to build the same amount of muscle I would on a carb-heavy diet? Yes, it absolutely is, and the only thing you build on a carb-heavy diet is fat around the muscles and water around the muscles. The carbs don't actually build the muscle unless you are taking drugs like human growth hormone and insulin. If you're a natural, the best way you're going to build that muscle and build an actual physique that looks like you work out is by eating the carnivore diet. Because if you eat your standard bodybuilding diet of high carbs, high protein, and low fat, you're going to look like a pile of shit. The only reason that diet works is if you have the drugs to go along with it. If you don't have the drugs, it's going to make you look terrible. The only way you're going to look, there are 2 ways you're going to look good. And that way is either intermittent fasting, where you fast for a minimum of 16 hours each and every day, or you eat a carnivore diet of 0 carbs. Those are the only 2 ways your body's going to recomp and actually have low body fat and muscle mass and actually look like you work out. Your only 2 options. Sebastian Hart asks, as a traditional white man, I am sick and tired of living in the politically correct leftist country of the Netherlands. I feel betrayed by the modern exploiters. I mean politicians that manage my country. I am getting really sick of seeing the Islamization of my country progress while nearly all of my family and friends are in such denial and feel they should be tolerant. Therefore, I am thinking of moving to a country in the Western world that still holds strong traditional values. I am very motivated to move to the southern USA, where a lot of Trump supporters and no political correctness lives. I love it to be in the countryside area. Do you know of any such areas in the USA or in the world? Friend, I don't mean to laugh at you, but in the southern United States, it's very politically correct. There is not a strong value for tradition here. It simply is not here, like it is simply not in the Netherlands. It is gone. And I'm coming to you directly right now from the southern United States, and every day I am just flabbergasted at the amount of self-denial in these people who are tolerant of being invaded and being conquered and just really gently going into the good night without a fight. So I don't know any place in the Western world that still holds strong traditional values. If you know of such a place, I want to move there as well. Now, of course, you have what we call rednecks out in the country in the southern United States. In the U.S., the redneck areas are going to be your best bet. They still like to hunt and fish, but you'll even find them mostly listening to rap these days. So there is no tradition in the Western world anymore. Tradition has been annihilated. It has been murdered. It has been killed. There is no tradition. And this is one reason why we are all so lost today. Tradition is gone. This happened once before in history. And the people left the tyranny that they were facing in Europe, and they went to this new country called the United States, and they built a great new country of freedom. But that was a long time ago, friends, and that country has been subverted, feminized, conquered. I wish I had a better answer for you, friend. Because if you find this place, I'd love to move there too. The problem is, it's going to be very difficult living in a traditional place without your people. What makes tradition is your people. And if your people are conquered cuckolds, then you don't have any people, you don't have tradition. So this is the plight of all of the Western men who are not conquered yet. We have been betrayed by our people. We have been betrayed by our politicians. We have been betrayed by our own family and friends who are in such denial that they feel tolerant to those doing the conquering. So this is a very near and dear topic to my heart, and I'm sure we will discuss more of this in the future, because something must be done in regards to this. Florio asks, how does someone work for 16 to 18 hours per day? He says he plays computer games for a living. Well, drugs would probably be your number one. Drugs like modafinil, Adderall. Those drugs will fuck you up. In the long term, they'll fuck you up, and you'll wish you never did them. But in the short term, they will help you to work 16 to 18 hours a day. Otherwise, the only other way to do it naturally is to just have an intense desire to do it. And I don't even know that it's really necessary to play for 16 to 18 hours a day. It's just necessary to be the best. So rethink, is it necessary to work 16 hours a day actually playing video games? Or is it necessary to play them for, say, 10 hours a day and spend the other 6 or 8 hours strategizing and figuring out ways how you can make your job easier but also better, how you can beat the competition without trying to work yourself into an early grave. He also asks, do you still use 5-HTP? No, I don't use a goddamn thing for the past year and a half. Like I've said many times, I use absolutely nothing. I'm about to get back on the chemistry bandwagon though, because I'm finding out that you can do all things right and still not be where you want to be. Because again, our environment is polluted, and it's as simple as that. But I haven't taken anything in a year and a half, but I'm about to get on red growth. I also got some CBD oil in, but it seems like the CBD oil I have is not of good quality, so I'm going to have to find a new source for CBD oil to give it a try. Other than that, I don't take anything, but I am realizing more and more and more and more, if you want to be the best you can be, if you want to be what you should be, what you would naturally be in nature, chemistry has to help you out. Is that a good thing or a bad thing? It just is. That's the world we live in. We don't live in the world we wish we lived in. We live in this world. And in this world, we've got to do what we got to do to be the best. Philip asks, did you initially hire a web designer to make B&D, or did you figure out everything for yourself? Initially, I figured out everything for myself after having a friend come over and set up WordPress for me because I didn't know how. And that's actually how we started BadNet, because back in the day, I had no clue how to start a blog. And I'd have a friend come over and install WordPress for me and show me how it was done. So at badnet.com, if you want to start a blog and you don't know how, then BadNet will do it for you. We'll install WordPress for you and give you 5 free reports showing you how to make money from your blog. But after I had my friend set up WordPress for me, I figured out everything for myself, because you need to learn everything about your craft. Otherwise, you're going to be not very good at your craft. So for a couple of years, I did absolutely everything myself. Then in 2013, Badman was brought on board, and he's been taking care of all the back-end stuff since then. He goes on to say, you mentioned we are living in a virtual reality thanks to smartphones. I'm currently doing freelance work as a content creator for a cryptocurrency startup. Their ICO project is to have the entire world living in a virtual reality simulation one day, saving resources and making people digitally immortal. Millions of dollars have been invested, and the more I learn, the more I realize that the masses could actually be heading towards such an existence. What are my thoughts on that? Well, it's a real fun thing to dream about. It's a real fun thing to pretend is going to happen. But Mother Nature always wins. Human nature always prevails. So you think we're going to live in the machine and be digitally immortal and become digital gods and all this stuff. The problem is people are getting dumber. They're not getting smarter, they're getting dumber. So eventually people are going to be so dumb they can't do anything. They can't work the machines that we have, and everything's going to go back to the way it was before. Human nature will always prevail. Mother Nature will always prevail. Technology will always fail in the long term. So you might have some rich billionaire chop his head off and freeze it and then put a computer inside of it, and everybody's going to pretend like he's living. But these things are not, this is not reality. This is fake. This is a virtual reality. The minds of people are so diluted and denatured and degenerated that people actually think we're going to live inside machines, or we're going to become one with computers, or we're going to become digital gods and live forever in the computer. None of this is going to happen. People are getting dumber. The world is eventually going to revert to what it was, and we're going to build up again like we've done so many times in the past. Human nature always prevails, and technology always fails in the long term. Nick asks, what's your biggest mistake you've ever made? Why did you make it, and how did you resolve it? Well, good golly gosh, am I in a job interview or what? You know, I don't ever dwell on my mistakes. At least I don't try to dwell on my mistakes. I tend to think of mistakes more as learning. And it's real difficult to learn without making mistakes, because we can do everything right in the world. And if we do everything right, we don't know what in the hell we did right, because we just did it naturally. We don't know what was right and what was wrong. When we make mistakes, we learn. We think, oh, okay. Well, if I do that, then that gets me the result that I don't want. So I shouldn't do that anymore. So a mistake is just a way to say, oh, okay, I shouldn't do that. It's like touching a hot stove when you're a little baby. You realize, you know what? Next time I'm not going to touch the stove when it's hot because it burned me. So I don't dwell on my mistakes, but I do learn from them. Christopher asks, hi Victor, you have mentioned in a previous post about what the Japanese call senpaku eyes, and I have noticed that the whites of my eyes are visible slightly below my iris. Apparently this means that I am a danger to myself, though not to others. Based on my past actions, I'd say that this is about accurate, and I have had problems with addictions. What, if anything, can I do about this? Deliberately narrowing my eyes is at best a temporary measure and doesn't address the underlying issue. What's going on is it's not your eyes that are determining your behavior. Your behavior determines what your eyes look like. Your insides will always express themselves on your outside. That's the way it works. So if you are a danger to yourself, it's going to show up in your eyes. If you are a crazy person looking for power over others, it's going to show up in your eyes. And if you look at people with thin lips, be very wary of people with thin lips, because those people have thin lips because they are usually manipulative or even psychopathic. And they have thin lips because they're trying to keep the truth in. So they got to press their lips real tight together. Now, these things seem like they don't make sense. How could the inside project onto the outside? But that's what happens. That's what it does. Be very wary of people who have the whites of the eye showing above their eye, and be very wary of people with thin lips. Now, regarding how do you fix this, you have to fix the underlying issue. Of course, closing your eye a little bit more is not going to fix the issue. You have to deal with your problems. You have to deal with your addictions. You have to conquer and overcome all of your addictions. And when you do this, your eyes will become normal. Your eyes right now are a warning sign that you are on the wrong path and you must get on the right path at all costs. Say no to all of the addictions, but first put it firmly in your mind that you don't need them, because you don't need them. Addictions are addictions because they are things that are not good for you. If they were good for you, there would be no need to be addicted to them because you would do them naturally. These things that addict us are very bad for us, and we just simply need to know that we don't need them, and what they do is destroy us. All addictions destroy us. They make us feel they're sweet at first, and then they turn sour. At first we think, yeah, that's great, and then the real truth comes much later. All addictions will try to conquer you. You have to go ahead and conquer your addictions, and when you do that, your eyes will return to normal. Orestes asks, how can we improve our creativity? Discover things and put them in motivational articles is one thing, but create something entirely new like a story seems like the way harder and slower. Do you have any suggestions? Yeah, this is the central goal of all the great men of history. The mental alchemy, you might call it. Creating something from nothing. The great work. How do we do this? And you have to figure it out for yourself. That's the reality. That's the secret. You have to figure it out. If you rely on other people to give you answers, you will never get the answers. The answer comes from you, nobody else. It is your own will that you must use to create something from nothing. You must will it into existence, not ask it into existence. You will it into existence. You create something from nothing using the power of your own will. How do you do it? Most of you cannot do it, and that is why there are so few great men in the world, because only the very few who figure it out can be called great men. The ones who cannot figure it out on their own can never be called great men. Remember our word of the day? Self-reliance. If you cannot figure it out, you don't deserve it. Jason asks, I've had a lisp my whole life that I'm self-conscious about. I have trouble pronouncing the letter S or words that start with or include the letter S. Should I just forget about it and move on with my life or work hard to correct it? It feels impossible at this point in my life because of habit. Please advise what you would do. Well, let me be blunt with you. Any adult who speaks with a lisp is a degenerate fucking retard. And if you don't work to fix it, it's because you're fine being a degenerate fucking retard. Listen to me read this. Listen to this. I've had a lisp my whole life that I'm self-conscious about. I have trouble pronouncing the letter S, or words that start with or include the letter S. Should I just forget about this and move on with my life, or work hard to correct it? It feels impossible at this point in my life because of habit. Please advise what you would do. I sound like a fucking retard, don't I? If you don't want to sound like a fucking retard, work on it and fix it. If you don't work on it and fix it, then be content with sounding like that. Luke asks, do you still train your posterior chain as often as you did to keep your lower back pain away, or do you simply do maintenance work on your gym days? I've been writing a lot more, and sitting in front of the computer has not treated my lower back too well. Any additional tips for days when you're working a long time? Okay, I do train the posterior chain at least 3 days a week, every other day. Always train the hamstrings and the glutes, always, always, always. And in fact, every morning I wake up and I do my stretches, and I actually train the glutes and hamstrings a little bit every morning. And I also stretch throughout the day. If I'm at home working, I will try to get down and stretch every hour on the hour. And I always end my workouts with a long stretch session. I figured out that the key to reducing soreness in your legs is to stretch after every workout. And you get a much better stretch after you work out than you do after you just wake up or whatever, because it elongates the muscles when you train them. So it's always, always great to stretch after a workout. And it's also great to stretch multiple times per day. Stretching one time per day is simply not enough, especially when we sit down so much to live in our virtual reality. It's so important to get up and stretch multiple times a day. And if you work from home, get up and stretch every hour on the hour, no matter what. And also take time to get away from the computer. Go take the dogs for a walk, go for a run, go to the gym, go do this, go do that. But take time to get up off of the chair. And if you can have a standing desk or you can work standing up, do that as well. Benjamin asks, Vic, what drives individuals to unspeakable acts of cruelty? Ooh, this is a very strong question. And I've got 3 things I want to say about this, what drives people to unspeakable acts of cruelty, because I do spend a lot of time thinking about this when I think of things like why our society is the way it is. And I've got a lot to say about this. What do you say we cover this in the beginning of the next episode of the Bold Then Determined podcast, or possibly renamed as the Victor Pride podcast? Friends, don't forget to go ahead and pick up your bottle of Red PC 2.0, kill that estrogen. I'm going to be on Red PCT 2.0 after I finish my red growth cycle. If you enjoyed this episode of the Bold and Determined podcast, here's what I want you to do. I want you to go to iTunes and leave a 5-star review and let other people know that there is this great show called the Bold and Determined podcast that could possibly change their life. And until next time, my friends, have a great day.